When it happened to me, I started looking for somebody who could do for me what I can do for you.
Right.
I never found one. I
Oh,
never found
geez.
anybody. And I was like frantic. It was my shoulder, and I couldn't move my elbow more than 2 inches away from my waist in any direction. I mean, it was literally locked at my waist, very painful. And so finally I went, okay, I have to figure this one out. And I'm trying to figure it out. And I'm like, how am I supposed to work on the back of my shoulder? So I get this little message in my head, and it says, well, figure it out.
Welcome to Bed, Back, and Beyond, sharing positive stories of recovery from serious back or neck injury. Your host is CK, a fellow champion who draws on her own experience with herniated disc surgery. Join her as she talks with others who have overcome the physical and emotional trauma of a painful injury, and discover for yourself how you can find hope and encouragement in recovery.
Hi, and thank you for joining me on the Bed, Back, and Beyond podcast. Today, I am joined by Julie Donnolley, a licensed massage therapist and a pain relief expert. Julie, thank you so much for joining me on the show. I would love for you to tell us a little bit about yourself right now. Where are you located?
Well, thank you for inviting me, Christine. I am in Sarasota, Florida, which is beautiful in the winter, a little warm in the summertime, but great in the wintertime.
And what do you do right now?
Well, I'm a muscular therapist and about 35 years specializing in the treatment of chronic pain and sports injuries. Um, a muscular therapist is different. My license says massage therapy because you have to have a license to touch. So that's what my license is for. But I stopped doing massage probably 30 years ago and focused specifically on conditions like low back pain, sciatica, plantar fasciitis, headaches, TMJ.
Okay.
Go through the body. I've got them all.
I saw in your profile that you started out, well, you were doing massage therapy on a cruise ship,
It
but
was.
it was the different ailments that were coming to you that
Right.
maybe that helped you make that switch to muscle. Would you
Yeah,
like
it
to
was.
describe that for a little bit?
Well, absolutely. In fact, if I have a TED talk called The Pain Question No One Is Asking, and it talks about this in a little bit more length. But I had decided on the ship, it was a little boring. It was doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over. And so I decided to make a home study class, and I called it the muscle of the day. And so each day I would study one muscle thoroughly, and when I would do a regular massage on your whole body except that one muscle. And on that muscle, I'd go slow and I'd go deeper. And if I felt something that didn't feel right, I'd say to you, does this hurt? And you'd say yes or no. But then you'd say, well, it's funny, you're pressing me here on my arm, but I'm feeling it in my shoulder. So I'd run over to my desk and I'd say, pushed here, felt there. And at the end of the day, I wouldn't leave the massage room until I figured out why, if I pushed here, did you feel it there? And the next day, I would do a different muscle. Well, I was on the ship for a year, which was kind of like you died and went to heaven, by the way.
I bet.
It was fun. It was a lot of fun. But I really, really learned my muscles.
Mm,
Well, in the TED Talk, it talks about how way early on, I mean, it was a muscle here in the shoulder, and I started with the head, so there's only like 3 muscles before I got to here. So it probably was the first week of me doing this. And I'm working on this woman, and I did a nice massage everywhere else, but I'm working on this muscle. So she's laying on her back, and I have my left hand under her neck, and I have my right hand, and I found that it feels like a little golf ball. That,
hmm
yeah. Well, this point here is the primary cause of headaches,
Okay.
tension headaches, just all kinds of headaches. And so I'm rubbing on that, like what I did is I don't rub this way. It's more like I stay still and then I kind of do this, like just back and forth a little bit. And at the exact same moment that I felt the muscle just go poof, she opened her eyes and she went, "Oh my gosh." And I got scared. I thought I did something wrong. Right? And I go over and I said, "What?" I really was scared. And she said, "I've had a horrible headache for 3 weeks. It just this second went away." So being very mature and very professional, I looked down at her and I went, "Wow."
I
I was
mean, I
just
did that on purpose.
I was yeah, right. Oh, I did that. I knew that was gonna
I knew
happen.
it, yeah.
Please, I was so happy that she wasn't paralyzed. You know? Anyway, that started me knowing that I wanted to do more than just relaxing massage. And then a little bit further on, and this will be interesting to your audience actually. They bring this man he comes into my office, and my office was a little bigger than your walk-in closet, just a little bigger than that. And so it was very tiny. And they bring him in a wheelchair. And what had happened was when he was on the plane on the way down to the ship, he started getting sciatica. So we would leave New Orleans on a Saturday afternoon. So Sunday we were at sea. Monday we were in Key West. And they brought him to the hospital because he was in such pain he could barely breathe. They bring him to the hospital, and the hospital says, "It's just a muscle. Go see the massage therapist." So they bring him back on board. He comes in that evening because I had evening hours that day. So he came in, and I'm looking and I'm thinking to myself, "Wow, I'm a brand new massage therapist. What do I know? I don't know what to do." This is really serious. This man's in a wheelchair and he's in
Yeah.
serious pain.
Oh my goodness.
So I kind of I depend a lot on my intuition, and it has really never failed me. But so it took his wife and I both to get him up on the table because he was in so much pain. And then I started working on the muscles that I knew by this time caused that pain pattern. So I'm working on it. And when I got finished, he was able to get off the table on his own. And that was a big step in the right direction. And he left pushing the wheelchair.
Oh, wow.
Right. So then he came in every day. So that would have been Monday. So then on Thursday was our formal night. So everybody's in the beauty salon and they're getting their hair all done. And he didn't want to sit in the beauty salon with all these ladies. So he was out in the hallway. So I went out to get him and he literally ran into the massage room. And I looked at him and said, "You just ran in here." And he stopped and he went, "Oh, I just ran in here."
Ah,
And I looked and he says, "Julie, I went out dancing with my wife last night." He said, "And I've been going up that center staircase every day." He said, "I think I'm better." Right? Which was thrilling because this is now Thursday afternoon, late afternoon, and they leave on Saturday morning. So I only had like this little tiny window of time to make a difference. And so it made such a difference that I knew at that point I would never be doing relaxing massage, that I was specializing in the treatment of chronic pain and sports injuries. And it was when it happened to me, my problem, which started out actually as my shoulder, and I couldn't find anybody who could do to me what I know I can do to you. And this was years later. And by this time, I had worked on literally hundreds and hundreds of people who had every kind of condition from headaches to plantar fasciitis, which is foot, and everything in between. But when it happened to me, I started looking for somebody who could do for me what I can do for you.
right.
I never found one. I
Oh,
never found
geez.
anybody. And I was like frantic. It was my shoulder, and I couldn't move my elbow more than 2 inches away from my waist in any direction. I mean, it was literally locked at my waist and very painful. And so finally I went, "Okay, I have to figure this one out." And I'm trying to figure it out. And I'm like, "How am I supposed to work on the back of my shoulder?" So I get this little message in my head and it says, "Well, figure it out." Thank you so much. I appreciate the help. So, and I did. And I was able to figure it out. It took me a while. Um, by this time, it was October of that year. And by February, I was 100% better.
Wow.
And there's way too much that went on between October and February to tell the audience now.
Sure.
But it involved treating every single muscle individually that worked on the shoulder. And it's the same thing whether it's sciatica or knee pain, it's working on every muscle that impacts that joint and doing them individually. And it's not hard. Seriously, not hard. But then when you know how to do something, it's not hard. And that's what I do. I teach people how to do it.
Wow. And so you were able to make yourself feel better without medication, without drugs,
No surgery. Yeah,
no
absolutely.
surgery. Wow.
Yeah. Because, if you think about it, Christine, if first let's talk like people say, well, I stretch.
Mm-hmm.
So think about this. If you took a rope that was 12 inches long and you tied enough knots in it and you made it 10 inches long, and then you tried to stretch it back to 12 inches, you might get it back. But what did you do? You made the
Tighten the knot.
knots tighter
Yeah.
and you overstretched the fibers that are not in the knot.
Mm.
And in the body, the two ends of that rope are attached to a bone on each end. So they're pulling, and it's very much like pulling your hair and your scalp hurts. If you're pulling your hair and your scalp hurts, you don't need a scalp massage. You don't need to take aspirin, and you certainly don't need brain surgery. You need to let go of your hair. And really, that's all it is. It's a matter of finding the knot, applying direct pressure, and holding it. Like, stop rubbing over it. Just apply pressure and hold it. And then after it'll release. I mean, it just releases.
I have to make sure my husband isn't around listening to you because my part-time job is rubbing his shoulders.
Well, you can still do that. I mean, it still feels good and it feels wonderful.
Yeah.
You don't have to stop.
Oh my goodness. So, because of your cruise experience and then your personal injury experience, you were able to grow and develop your own muscular treatment form. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. When I got off the ship, I got off in St. Thomas. So I was living down there, lived on a sailboat, which was really fun.
It really
And
does sound like a terrible few years for you.
somebody has to do it.
Sure.
So I volunteered. It was great. And I had a client who was a retired osteopath back from the old days when they used to do spinal adjustments and nutritional counseling. And, they used to do the whole gamut. And he immediately found out that I knew more about muscles than most massage therapists. But what was more important was that I wanted to learn more than most massage therapists. And so what we do is I'd go to the house, and first I'd give him his massage, and then he'd get off the table, and his wife would get on. I'd give her massage, but then he would come back in and he would teach me osteopathic techniques that were valid with my license. All things that I had never been exposed to. And by that time, I was a therapist 2 years, but it was like through all my education prior to that, I had never even heard about doing any of this stuff. So he taught me that. And then we would have lunch together, the three of us. Then his wife would go off and do whatever she was doing. And we'd sit there for another 2 or 3 hours, and he would just teach me. And he taught me all about the muscles, what they do, how they do it, why they do it, how this one impacts that one, what happens to the tendon. I mean, the whole thing. It was a most amazing class. I can't thank him enough. I wish I knew his name now so that I could just contact him and say, look at what you did. And because I think of him all the time and appreciate all the time. But it's called Jules Stroh Muscular Therapy, and Jules Stroh just stands for Julie Stroke,
Okay.
So Jules Stroh Muscular Therapy, or the Jules Stroh method of osteopathic muscular therapy is the real name. And I've been teaching it. It's like I learned because of my injuries. What I learned is yes, you can come in and I can get rid of your shoulder pain, your low back pain, whatever the case may be. And the odds are like really, really good that I could get rid of it. Um, but I know that within a week you're going to get it back. And so the only way that I'm truly doing what I want to do, which is make a difference in the world, is teaching you how to do it. And so I do. So you come in, and if you have an hour session, the first 45 minutes is me working on you, and the last 15 minutes is me teaching you how to do it.
Wow.
So that you can leave and take care of yourself.
Did I see that you also do Zoom consults?
I do. I've worked with people in Egypt, South Korea, Switzerland, Australia. Oh, let I tell you this. So this man had in Australia. So I knew his wife from a networking group that I was in, which the group actually is here in Florida, but she's in Australia. And so she called me up this one day, and apparently her husband had done something, and it was sciatic and low back. And it was so bad he couldn't get out of bed. He couldn't even turn over in bed. And he was just in pure agony. And it was going to be Mother's Day. It was the day before Mother's Day in Australia, which I think is a different date than it is in the United States. But he had wanted to go see his mother because his mother was in the process of dying, and he figured this was going to be her last Mother's Day. But he had to cancel. He was going to cancel his flight reservation because he couldn't get out of bed. So she called me up and she said, "Can you do anything?" So what we did was we figured out her computer on the desk. It was really kind of funny what we had to do so that I could see her husband in the bed and see her. Okay. And then she could see me. And I was talking her through it and telling her, okay, move your hand a little bit to the left, use this much pressure. By the time we got finished, he was able to get out of bed and move around, and he was moving. So he leaves the room, and she and I are still talking. And maybe about 5 or 10 minutes later, she said, "I have to show you something." So she turns the computer around so that I can see out the window. He was outside mowing the lawn before he would leave to go see his mother. So
Wow. That's
it
a huge
was,
improvement.
yeah, it was huge. I mean, he's in
Yeah.
Australia, really.
Yeah. So what is the muscle connection to sciatica?
Well, there are multiple steps.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to shortcut you, but I'm going to kind of breeze through them, or we
Sure.
could be here for 2 hours.
Yeah.
So, what happens is there's a muscle on the very front of your spine, like underneath your intestines, like straight through your belly. And it's called the psoas muscle. And the psoas muscle comes down your spine and inserts into your thigh bone on the inside of your thigh bone. When that muscle contracts, you bend forward, like to pick up something off the floor. Then there's a second muscle, which is actually the more important muscle. It's called the iliacus, and it's on the inside curve of your pelvis. And it joins with the psoas muscle, and then the two of them insert into your thigh bone. When the iliacus muscle contracts, you lift up your leg either to take a step or to sit down. So it's making that movement. The thing is, because of the two of them, I mean, one picking up your leg, the other one bending you forward, the only time one or both of these muscles is not being used is when you're standing straight and still. Like in our case, we're both sitting down. So for both of us, those two muscles are almost fully contracted. And there's a phenomenon called muscle memory. And muscle memory says when a muscle is held in a position for a period of time, it actually shortens to that length. So I don't know if you can see this. Hopefully you can see this. If the muscle goes from here to here, all right, you can see that, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
All right, so this is how long the muscle is. If I'm then sitting down, this is how long the muscle is. muscle memory sets in, and I go to stand up and watch my thumb. I go to stand up and it does that. And it's pulling down on your lumbar vertebra, but it's also pulling down on your pelvis at the same time. So they're both coming forward and down. Then there's a muscle of your thigh, which I call the keystone, because if you don't release this muscle, it really doesn't matter what you do.
Okay.
Nothing. And I'm going to show, in fact, that's the gift I'd like to share with your audience. And we'll talk more about it later, but I want to show them how to treat that muscle. That muscle is so key. If you don't release it, you may as well stay home. Like, don't even bother going to see the chiropractor or anybody. And what it is it originates on the tip of your pelvis and it inserts right below on your shin bone, like right below your knee. But when it contracts, it straightens your leg. Like, that's the purpose for the muscle. It's one of the 4 quadriceps, but the other 3 all originate on your thigh bone. Only this one originates on your pelvis. But the pelvis has come down. So now that muscle is too long to do the job of straightening your leg. The body ties a knot, and it always, 100% of the time, or let's say 99%, and I just haven't found that other one person yet, it always ties it. If you're standing up and your arms are just relaxed at your side, where your middle finger touches your thigh, that's where it's going to be. So people will be able to fix it real easy, just figure out where it is.
Right.
Anyway, so what happens is it ties a knot there. That knot is now holding your pelvis down in the front. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, in the back, so move around to the back. If the front of the pelvis is coming down, it means the back of the pelvis is coming up. And your hamstrings, the back of your thigh, they originate on the posterior pelvis and they insert on your lower leg. And when they contract, you bend your knee. So every step you take when you're sitting down, whenever you bend your knee, it's your hamstrings. They have their own muscle memory spasms. They have their own problems going on. But their originating point has moved up, which brings us into that knotted rope analogy. Okay, so they feel really tight, and people will say, oh, I have to stretch my hamstrings. They're so tight. No, don't do that. They're already overstretched. You could tear them. Don't do that. We'll do that later. But there's a notch in your pelvis. There's a notch. It's called the greater sciatic notch. And the sciatic nerve comes through that notch. So let's just say this is it. And here's the sciatic nerve coming through. Because of your pelvis rotating, it's doing this. So this bone is pressing up into your sciatic nerve. So you have a bone pressing into the nerve, which is incredibly painful. And then you have a muscle crossing over it. Now, a lot of people know about this muscle. It's called the piriformis. So many people who have sciatica that they know about the piriformis. But the piriformis is crossing over that notch and inserting into the very top of your thigh bone. But if the muscle is at an angle like this, and now because the pelvis has rotated, it's like this, muscles don't like to torque. So when they torque, which they're not supposed to do, they go like that and they tighten up. Well, now you have this muscle pressing down on the sciatic nerve. But the reason it happened was because the pelvis rotated. If the pelvis didn't rotate, that muscle wouldn't torque. So people are aware of it. They're just kind of coming into the middle of the story. And they're missing the important first parts. And then there's another muscle that's in your low back. It originates on the posterior pelvis and goes up into your 12th rib. And that one picks up your hips so that your leg can move. It can move. But what's happened now is because the pelvis went up in the back, it makes that muscle be too long to do the job of picking up your hip. So the body ties the knot right at the 12th rib. So you now have low back pain. When it can't tie any more knots there, it ties them all the way across the top of your pelvis. So now you really have low back pain. And so the whole idea is first you untie that keystone knot, the one I said that's in the front of your thigh.
Mm-hmm.
It's not on the very top of your thigh, and it's not on the very outside of your thigh. It's in between the two. So if you just put one hand at the top of your thigh and the other one out by your side seam, right in the middle, that's where
Okay.
that's where that knot will be. And all you have to do to get rid of that knot, you take a piece of PVC pipe, or actually you can do it right now. Take the heel of your hand,
Mm-hmm.
okay, and press it along the side of your thigh, like right where I was saying, not the top, not the
Right.
outside, but right in the middle. And press hard. You try press like you're trying to get down to the bone, and the muscle happens to be in the middle.
Right.
And you'll be going down, and all of a sudden you go like that. And when you go
Yeah.
open up, it hurts
Yeah.
because that's the knot that's pulling down on your pelvis that's causing the bone to press up into your sciatic nerve.
And so if somebody comes to you on a Zoom consult or to your website, you have videos that can walk them through these kind of self-treatment?
Yeah, I have videos. What we do, and it's really funny how it works out sometimes. I mean, where the computers are, so that the screens, the cameras, so that I can see them and they're on the floor. It's really funny. But yes, I send them, what I do is I send them videos of the self treatments so they can see it ahead of time. And then I have them doing it, but I'm watching. And so while I'm watching, I can say, let's say that keystone knot, right? The muscle is called rectus femoris for anybody who's interested. But um, so on that knot, I'll be looking. I'll say, no, you're too far to the top. Move a little toward the outside. And I'm giving them directions. And it's really funny because they'll find it and they'll go, ha! And it's like, yeah, you found it.
Oh my
So,
God. That's
um,
great.
I just feel so blessed
Mm-hmm.
that I'm just able to help so many people, Christine, so many people. And what's even better is so I teach you how to do it and I help you and you get out of pain. You're going to see you're at work and somebody has the same thing. You're going to share it,
You're right.
right? So it's like a ripple effect. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So, yeah. And it's the whole body. I mean, if you have calf pain, if you have pain in your knee, you can't straighten your leg all the way. Tiny little muscle this big prevents you from straightening your leg all the way. I mean, this 300. Well, they say 600 muscles, but that 600 is there's actually 300 with pairs, um, and the vast majority of them are in the muscles. Some of them obviously are in your intestines and visceral muscles, so we don't get involved in that. But I would venture to say that probably I can teach you about 200 of the muscles.
Wow. And do you do anything or do you teach anything about just routine muscle health?
Oh, absolutely. Uh, in fact, what we call it is a tune up. Makes sense, right? It's like people have taken care of whatever has been the problem, but their problem, let's say their problem was sciatica, low back, hip pain. Well, they haven't done anything with their shoulders. So what we'll do a tune up on the shoulders and I'll show them, okay, put a ball here, go lean into that doorway, go up and down. And so they're going up and down here. And they're like, it's so funny because to watch them, I often think of as a car, when you see them swim, they go, because people don't even know they have pain,
Mm-hmm.
right? And what happens, and this I think is fortunate, the brain only pays attention to the greatest pain. So if your greatest pain, let's go back to sciatica. If your greatest pain is sciatica, you're not even paying attention to the fact that your shoulder hurts until you straighten out the sciatica, because now that's not the greatest pain anymore. So the brain goes to the greatest pain, which now happens to be, let's say, your shoulder. And people come in and say, well, my hip is doing great, but what did you do to my shoulder? It's like, well, I didn't do anything to your shoulder.
Oh, goodness. So you mentioned a gift for the listeners.
Yeah. What I mean, it's very, very important to me that I share
Mm-hmm.
my knowledge. And so what I'd like to do if they can send me an email and just put down, Bed Back and Beyond, um, and make that in the subject line, Bed Back and Beyond gift, so that I'll know to watch for it. And I can send them the self-treatment for either, I can't send them the whole low back thing because I have a book, this one, that tells you everything.
Okay, great. The 15-minute back pain solution.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I would like to share how to do that keystone, that the rectus femoris.
Okay.
If you don't get that one, you're not getting anything else. And actually, I think I could also share how to do that, the one in the back called quadratus lumborum, the one that's holding the pelvis up in the back. So I'll share that. If they want, they can put low back sciatica, or I can send them a treatment for headaches or shoulder pain. And the truth of the matter is, if they say, I don't have any of those, but I have plantar fasciitis, and it's like, I'll send you the treatment for plantar fasciitis. So,
And what is your email?
Julie at flexibleathlete.com.
Great. I'll make sure to have that on the screen
Thank
and,
you.
so people can see who are watching. Why don't you
Thank
tell
you.
us about your books that you have available?
Well, as I said, I have this one, and the way this one came about, um,
That
now
says the 15-minute back pain solution.
the way that one came about was that whole scenario that I was just telling you about, this muscle, that muscle, blah, blah. Well, I was saying it so many thousand times that I thought to myself, okay, I'm going to make a tape recording of it. You'll be on the table. I'll push play. It can talk its way through it, and I'll just do my work. Well, obviously, that wasn't going to work. It was a good idea, but it didn't work. And then people, especially down here in Florida, we have snowbirds, and they come down here, and they're only here for the winter, and then they leave, and they don't remember how to do things. So what I did was I finally wrote the book for just that. Low back, sciatica, groin, hip, knee is covered in that book. Um, and then I have this book. It's called Treat Yourself to Pain-Free Living. And this is kind of for the general public, um, because I had originally written a book called The Pain-Free Triathlete. And because most of my clients, when I was up in New York, were endurance athletes, primarily Ironmen.
Okay.
And so I had written The Pain-Free Triathlete. Well, then the athletes started saying, there's more to life than running, swimming, and cycling. So, so I ended up writing a book called this here. It's The Pain-Free Athlete. The Pain-Free Athlete is actually an enhancement of the Pain-Free Triathlete, because there was, like, I don't know, 10 or 15 years between the two books. So I figured out a lot of treatments that are in this one that weren't in the other one. But you're not a triathlete, and you're not an endurance athlete. So you might not think to look in there to find out why your knee is hurting. It's in there, but you might not think about it. So
Mm-hmm.
that's how Pain-Free Living came about.
Okay. And these are all available on your website?
They're all available on the website. They all have, I'll show you this. They all have charts. So you see the yellow across the low back?
Yes.
So that would be like sacroiliac joint pain.
Right.
And you see the muscle name written in yellow. And then there's an arrow. And the arrow points to a little circle in yellow, which is
Okay.
kind of close to the groin. And that point is what causes that low back pain pattern. And there's 22 charts. I think it's 22 or 21 charts in here that teach you how to do all over the body. And that they're easy to read. And what they do is you just don't think, if you were having SI joint pain, you would never think to push down by your pubic area.
No. Mm-mm.
Yet that's where it is. So the
Wow.
charts will show you how to do that.
Very thorough. It looks like a very thorough book, wealth of knowledge.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was really important to me that, we're not going to live forever. And I'm trying. I'm trying. There's a possibility I might not make it.
Ah,
And I wanted to get this information out while I
mhm.
was still here.
Yeah.
And, and so now between the books, I have videos. I've got a video training program. If any of your audience is a massage therapist, I'm certified nationally as a continuing education provider for CE credits. And I have an online training program that they can learn how to do everything from head to foot. And then as a part of that, before they get their specialist, diploma, they have to come for a 4-day class just to feel the pressure. But the knowledge is all in the videos, so but they have to be a massage therapist to take that.
And what is your website again?
Well, this primary one from everybody would be flexibleathlete.com. And if they're a massage therapist, they can go to jmomt.com. Stands for Julstrom Method of Osteopathic Muscular Therapy. But that would be more for if there's any massage therapist or physical therapist.
Wow. And you can get CE credits, you said, as a
Yeah,
massage therapist through.
yeah, yeah, you can.
I can tell you're very passionate about making people feel better.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I appreciate you being willing to come on and just share some of your knowledge with us. I hope people just go and find your website and help themselves feel better. Pain is no fun.
No,
But
it just takes too much energy to be in pain. And for the most part, if it's muscular, we can resolve it.
right, we don't have to live in pain.
Right, right.
Okay. Thank you, Julie, so much
Thank you,
for
Christina.
joining me on the podcast. If you are a listener and you have a positive story of recovery from injury, head over to bedbackbeyond.com and click share your story. I would love to include your voice on the show. Once again, Julie, thank you so much.
Thank you, Christine.